Welcome to today's Digital Transformation webinar. My name is Sarah McChesney, and on behalf of ProTech Training, I will serve as your host for today. This presentation will last approximately 45 minutes, with time reserved at the end for Q&A. During the webinar, please feel free to enter any questions into the question area, which can be found within the top right-hand corner of your screen within the control panel. Today's presentation is being recorded, and you will receive the slide deck along with the recording in the coming days. Today's presenter is Eric Bloom. Eric is the Executive Director of the IT Management and Leadership Institute. He is also the founder of OfficeInfluence.com. Eric is an Amazon best-selling author, a speaker, a trainer, and an executive coach. Eric holds over 10 years experience training students around the globe within a virtual environment. Eric is also a formerly nationally syndicated columnist. He is a TEDx speaker and a recognized thought leader on the use of influence within the workplace. Eric was also a past president of National Speakers Association of New England. He is a certified professional speaker, CSP, and is the author of various books, including Office Influence, Get What You Want from the Mailroom to the Boardroom, and The CIO's Guide to Staff Needs, Growth, and Productivity. Prior to his current role, Eric was a senior IT executive at various firms, including Fidelity Investment, Monster.com, and Independence Investments. With no further ado, I bring you Eric Bloom.
Hi all, and thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah and others there for engineering and organizing today's talk, as well as certainly to ProTech in general, and welcome to everyone who's on with us today. As you know, the topic is the IT's 4 potential roles in digital transformation. I'd like to show you what those 4 roles are now. Now, let me also say, for those of you saying, well, that's great, but it's IT, you know, I'm not the CIO, I'm CIO -1, -2, an IT manager, or even an individual contributor, is that I'm explaining this. What I'd like you to do is basically correlate it to who you are personally. You know, if you're the CIO, then look at it at both the IT organization in total, as well as yourself, because all of these things apply to you personally, as well as the organization at large. If you're in an IT manager's role, say head of help desk or, you know, financial systems, HR systems, etc., look at it from your chiefdom, as well as, again, from you specifically. Now, rather than describe what these 4 types are here, what I'm going to do is we'll be having many slides that will have this same diagram, where I'll be explaining the different pieces of it as we move forward. But first, let's begin by talking about the different axes on here. The first axis is vertical. It's IT's, or maybe I should go like this so I can read it, IT's organizational clout. Organizational clout is the amount of influence, respect, and confidence that the organization has towards IT. Now, just moving to talk about you for a moment, that would be the same thing for you, except replace the words IT with the word you. But anyway, so that's what organizational clout is. But what it also is, though, it's not only, you know, the respect that comes to you, but it's the organization's willingness to listen to IT's recommendations. You know, as you'll see, as we're talking about senior management and other things, they may or may not be interested in hearing what IT has to say, or they may look at IT at a very senior level as, you know, basically a, you know, as a strategic weapon to be used against the competition. So a lot of, you know, some of this is you, but some of this is the organization at large. Next is if you're looking at these and you say, well, what's low clout? You know, it's that what happens if you're low in this category and perceive yourself or IT to be? Well, what does that mean? What is it caused by? Well, it could be caused first by, is listed here, C-suite related issues. It could be a lack of respect for the IT profession. It could be technology seen as more of a necessary evil than a strategic asset. But what it also could be is just a personal desire of the people doing digital transformation within the C-suite to do it without IT. For example, very often in marketing organizations, you'll have a title called CDO, Chief Digital Officer, that basically is in charge of all of those digital things related to marketing. which would be, you know, the website, email aggregation, everything related to social media, Twitter, all of those kind of things, active listening and so on. So if that's being done and the marketing person really wants to drive that, it's really hard for IT to then step in and do so. What it also could be, which you have to consider, is could it be a potential weakness in IT's execution? And we'll talk about, IT, when it goes to execute, when we do things in IT, it really falls under 4 specific categories. The first category is, well, IT is a utility provider. Think of it like the electric company. And what do we provide? Well, systems that are up 24/7, internet connectivity, email, all sorts of other things related to that. So that's the first type. So let me ask you a question. When you woke up this morning to, get some work done and, well, be here today to listen to my words of wit and wisdom, when your alarm clock went off this morning, did you run over to the telephone, pick it up, call the electric company and say, you know what, electric company, thank you so much for having the power on all night. The reason is because I needed to get up this morning and I really appreciate the power being on. No, when has anyone ever done that? I might do it one day just for fun to see what they say. But anyway, is that now let me turn it to IT. Have you ever gotten a call from an executive who came in 6:30 on a Tuesday morning to send some emails, do some internet search, run a couple of applications, and at 9 o'clock when you came in, called you up or came down to your office and said, hey, Sarah, really want to thank you for having the systems up all night. I appreciate it. No. When do you talk to the electric company? When the power goes out or your bill is too high. When do you talk to IT, for similar type of services? Exactly the same. So anyway, the first level of IT is as a utility provider. Next is as an on-demand service. Well, what's an on-demand service? Well, help desk breaks. Your PC breaks. So what do? You call the help desk, ask them to come down and fix it. You order food in. What could that be? That could be ordering a new laptop for yourself. So basically, it's these type of, and again, I'm going to put this also as a service. So how is services? You go to the same places you like, but also it's transactional. The business community is asking you to do something, and you're doing it on demand. Help desk is probably, again, the best example of that. So now let's move to level 3. Level of 3 is general contracting. This is the equivalent of you deciding to put a new garage on your home. So what do? You call a contractor, and they bring in subcontractors to excavate the ground, to put up the walls. They'll bring in roofing people to put on the roof, an electrician, etc. Well, what do we do in IT, particularly in a project management role? Well, we may be doing all the work internally, drawing on the various resources that we have within the IT organization, or actually going to third-party vendors. The fourth of which is as a strategic partner. This is where IT gets a seat at the business strategy table on what should be done, or more particularly at the digital transformation table, figuring out how technology can be used within the organization. Now, the interesting thing is that if you don't do the first 3 right, then unless there's some interesting political things going on at your firm regarding the personal clout of the CIO, is that if you don't do levels 1, 2, and 3 right, you'll never be invited to the table in a serious way to have a voice in where technology should go within your firm. You'll try it, and what they'll do is you'll say, hey, I got a brilliant idea that we could do to use technology to enhance marketing. And then the head of marketing or someone else will look at you and, it would be great, and say, it would be great for, helping the marketing and the sales team. Try to keep email up. That would be a good first step. So you see that unless you do these first 3 in a flawless way, then step 4, or level 4, becomes very difficult. And by the way, these 1, 2, and 3 and 4, it's also 4 of them, but it's very different from the 4 that you saw in the matrix. I almost wish there were 5 of these. Anyway, now let's turn back to IT's innovative nature. Excuse me. Innovative nature is the willingness and ability to innovate on behalf of the company, not just IT. Certainly, if you improve your nightly production cycle, if you bring in some different type of programming language or testing suite that makes life easier for you, if you move towards things in the cloud rather than a data center, those are awesome things, and they're definitely innovation in nature. But in addition to doing it for IT, from this perspective, again, is that we're thinking about IT's role within the organization. It transcends the type of innovation you're doing internally to include those things going on external. In other words, helping your business partners. So now, if you have low innovative nature within your IT organization, it's now you looking in. So it's the CIO looking down. It's someone within, say, your own chiefdom, again, help desk, human resource systems, financial systems, manufacturing systems, whatever it might be, is, one of the causes of low innovative nature could be is that your team, now it might be because of resources or other things, is your IT organization sort of operational / transaction based. If you're in a smaller IT firm, say 40 people or less in all of IT, generally speaking, the majority of time spent there is to keep the lights on, to process transactions, to upgrade the version of Word, to do some incremental enhancements behind the scenes, things along that line. In larger firms where resources are greater, quite frankly, is that there's generally more of a chance to move from being operational and just sort of keeping things rolling to having some resources that can be set aside to be thinking transformational or strategic. But the first thing is in your ability to, have an innovative nature, as well as do you have the resources and the people and the mental mindset to be able to do it. The next piece that falls into this, here we go, is a belief that innovation is not possible. So if you think, what do they say? If you think you can't do it, you'll always be right. Is that it might be because, why do people think that within IT that innovation is impossible? Well, it might be internal company politics. I was actually told once, I would give you an idea of how long ago this was. My title was data processing manager, okay? Remember, we went from data processing to management information systems, then into IT, information technology. And many of you may have already changed the names of your departments to business technology or something along that line. But I was the head of, the data processing manager. It was a smaller firm, and again, many, many years ago. And the president of the company did a speech to all of the clients. It was a financial-oriented and consulting-oriented company about innovation and how they're going to be, thinking about new, innovative ways to do things, et cetera. Now, hey, I was the technology guy. I was all excited. So what I did was I caught up with him after the meeting. I said to him, I said, hey, I don't remember his name. I'm going to call him Joe because, I don't know, just because I'm calling him Joe, and said, hey, Joe, I'm really excited, about your thoughts on innovation. There's a lot that we can do, from a data processing perspective to really enhance things. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, Eric? When I was talking about innovation, I meant in our products. I think of IT as overhead. And no, I'm sorry, he went the other way. My belief in a company that wants to be profitable is no overhead is good overhead, and IT is overhead. You want to be innovative, find a way to spend less money. Probably wasn't, in the cards for me to be, for data processing at the time, again, IT, to be seen as a strategic weapon toward the competition. It just wasn't there. So anyway, it could be either one of these reasons. It could also be, or coming from it, a lack of the funding and tools. As you can expect with the example that I gave you, funding wasn't too easy to find. Next is a lack of interest in IT leadership. In my case, certainly I was very interested in innovating, but there were many IT managers, and probably when I left there, the IT manager that came in to replace me, he was probably one that was happy, and there's no right or wrong or different or better or worse, it's just a different perspective, who was there, just saw IT as a way to support the organization and, didn't really want to move toward its involvement from a business perspective. And then lastly, it just could be the lack of ability to innovate. When you look internally in IT, what you'll see is that there's really two types of people within it. And IT truly needs them both to be successful. There are those people who do heads down work, like, for example, running the nightly production cycle. Every day is, the same, except that it has different errors, new things are put into it, new issues come up, but very process oriented. And then you have other people who, by their nature, tend to be very innovative. They like to say, hey, what's the new technology? How can we use it? The change agents within your organization. If by the nature of your hiring or by the nature of just necessity, you're more of an operational, transactional type organization, as mentioned earlier in the slide, then you may not have the people who are really interested in driving innovation. So now from here, let's move to the 4 pieces themselves. An observer. Basically, what this means is IT just isn't in the loop. More particularly, it means that all of the digital transformation that's happening is happening without IT support or involvement. So you can say, well, how can that happen? Well, with cloud computing, if you're implementing, say, I'll even say Salesforce, just picking on a CRM system, for example, is that if there's no connectivity to the internal systems, then all the VP of sales needs to implement Salesforce, other than certainly permission, is budget and a credit card. That's it. And IT could be finding out about it after the fact. But basically, or if there's a digital transformation organization as part of marketing, IT will hear about it, but they're not actually involved in either its design or its implementation. So there is if you're an observer. The next, let's move over now to requester. With a requester, as you can see by, well, where the box and the circle is that IT has high innovation, but doesn't really have much clout within the organization. Again, it could be caused by, the feelings of technology from the senior management, or it could be because of operational issues that have had over time that have put, as they say, kinks in the armor. But in this is IT has some great ideas on process reengineering and all of these cool things that could be done to enhance technology. However, no one is listening. Why aren't they listening? You don't have the cloud. So as a result of that, IT must pitch its ideas to its business partners, hoping to get an executive sponsor that loves the idea. Like, for example, let's say that I'm in an organization and the role that sort of IT is there is a requester. I might have to go, well, to you as, say, the head of sales, if I come up with some great new way that could help automation to drive sales or marketing or finance or whatever it is, or whatever role you're speaking to. But basically, it's not my clout that's going to make it happen. It's going to be the business executive who I've gotten to agree that what I want to do and what I've came up with is a good idea. Moving forward now to implementer. Implementer, a lot of IT shops are in this. I would say the majority of IT shops are in this space, and it's a very highly respected space. Its IT is respected, trusted, is relied upon, but doesn't have a seat at the digital transformation table. In other words, is the senior management team is thinking what they want to do, how they want to do it, and then once they come up with those great ideas by looking at industry and all this other stuff, then they turn to IT and very confident and having great confidence in IT, saying, okay, now implement it. But the thing is, in that case, if you think of how that's summed up, is IT is really viewed as a dependable service, not a digital transformation partner. Why? Because they're figuring out what it's going to be, and just like they're going to you, just like if you brought somebody in to do something in your home, that's the role that you will be playing. You won't say, gee, my home, the senior executives would be saying, look, the house looks really dirty. We should be bringing in someone to help us clean it. And then they bring in the cleaner. Well, the person they bring into the cleaner knows how to do it and so on, but they're not the one making the decision to bring you in. So this is sort of, an example of that from outside of sort of the IT organization itself. And the last is a leader, obviously high in both, high in innovative ability and in nature, and truly respected and having a voice within the organization in regard to cloud. This is where IT has a seat at the business strategy table. So anyway, from here now, you might be saying, well, it's great if we're in these different levels, but how do we get there? So now let's look and talk about that for a bit. If we're here, is that, needed IT, is that if you want to move from observer to implementer, and by the way, you will see by design, there is nothing that brings you from observer, directly to leader. Why? Because you have to go either up and over or over and up. It's just sort of the nature of it. You can be doing a little bit of incremental in each. But let's look at it here for moving, basically up or horizontal. So if you're moving this way, you want to move from being an observer to an implementer, is that first thing that you need to do, and these are really table stakes, you need to have stable technology platform, quality desktop support, because quite frankly, desktop, I'm going to speak to either those who manage IT, let me say those those who manage the help desk, those with a help desk as a business peer review, or those, well, in the help desk. So I guess that's everybody in IT. But anyway, is that the help desk, they are the face of IT to the organization in many ways. Why? Because they're the only IT function that hits every desktop, every person individually when they have an issue. But anyway, so upon this, to move up, the first thing you need is these: stable platform, quality help desk, timely product delivery, and then world-class customer service. So these are the things that are needed just to be considered to have the possibility of having clout. The next thing is if you're looking at those things and says, yeah, we're not highly viewed internally in regard to clout, but we meet all these criteria. Well, what does that mean? Well, it might be you have a branding issue. Is you're not internally marketing IT of the great services that you're doing, the great products, the things that you are working on behalf of all those that are taking it for granted. So anyway, is that if you feel you've met the top set, then, in newsletters and other things, just in the way you're talking about your organization, you need to be the chief cheerleader for it to help give it that visibility, which will then in turn give it clout. Let's go the other way. You have high innovative nature, but you want to move to a leadership role. Well, how do you do this? Well, first of all, as shown on the left side of the slide here, you still have to do all of those things that move you from observer up. But now what you need to add to it is you need to add thought leadership. What thought leadership is that's where you're coming up with the ideas. I'm going to talk about a CIO role for a minute, but but this is also very true of any person in IT that is in charge of the technology for business function. Could be finance, human resources, etc. You know what, actually, I think I'll pick on the human resources one for a minute. If you're the manager of human resource systems, HRIS or whatever you want to call it, okay? Then what your role is twofold if you're, again, the IT person supporting HR. The first is you have to understand the trends and everything going on in technology. If you come in and you go, wait a minute, we're not using, old PCs with floppy drives anymore, then probably you're not keeping up with technology. There's cloud, how can you use augmented reality, or all of these other tools that are coming in, artificial intelligence, or it's really what that is it's machine learning, or all of these technologies. In that role, not only do you have to keep up with what are the things going on in technology, but also what are the things going on in HR. Gee, it seems that firms now like Kronos and Workday, in many cases, are taking the industry by storm, in regard to implementing systems. They're moving from internal systems within HR to cloud-based, et cetera. So that first you have to keep track of everything going on, within certainly your industry and your company, but also technology and the technology related to the support group that you're in. And then with that basis of knowledge, again, moving toward thought leadership, if you need to be the one going to the human resources group and say, hey, you know what? There's some great technologies that we could take advantage of here, which means what? You have to understand the goals, the challenges, the successes, the processes of the group that you're supporting. So don't minimize what it takes to be that thought leader, but it's that thought leadership that will give you the clout and credibility to be moved up to being a leader. Next is, excuse me, is that all right, we're saying that if we're going to do this, now let's talk about skills and such. So the IT skills required to increase your organizational clout. So again, this is the skills piece. You have to have the technical ability to deliver. You have to have strong project management. Think of those 4 other things that I said before, where you're your utility, you're an on-demand service, et cetera. You have to have good project management. If you go to implement a new system and the whole thing falls apart because you don't know how to keep track of it, probably not going to help you on, the clout and reputational ability of IT. You have to have interpersonal communication. Why? Because if you're going to be, you have to be able to communicate to the business person as a business person, and you'll see that again later. You can't just be the chief technologist. Next is business acumen. You have to be able to see opportunities. What I put here before on the things that that are going on, technology trends and business trends, et cetera. How can you use these to your business advantage? and also study influence. There are many things. In fact, you heard in my bio, I've done a book on influence called Office Influence. But the thing is the reason I chose that and the reason you should study it, not mine if you want, but anybody's, is because it's the tip of the sword for all other types of interpersonal communication. What's negotiation? It's two people trying to it's interactive influence of me trying to get you to do what I want and you trying to get me to do what you want. What's conflict resolution? It's trying to influence you not to be mad at me anymore, or to not, for those in manager roles, not trying to influence two people on your team to not be mad at each other. So anyway, these are key skills. So now let's move from skills to, moving from implementer to leader. Now let's talk about what it takes to go this way. Is that it needed IT actions to be delivered. In other words, you have to build, if you want your IT, let's talk culture here, to be innovative. The first of all is you have to develop a safe culture in order to do so. In other words, let's say that you're the CIO and I come to you and say, hey, I got a great idea to try this. And you look at me and you say, Eric, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard. If you come up with something good, let me know. When am I ever going to bring another idea to you? So, it's sort of the shooting the messenger type concept. So the first thing is you have to make it safe for people in your team to be raising that type of knowledge. Next is that you have to give IT time to think. This is the biggest issue within smaller IT shops that are very lightly funded in regard to the amount of work that has to be done. If you and your team are spending like every waking moment keeping the lights on, holding the place together, with, as they say, paper clips and elastics, or my personal favorite, duct tape, is that you're not going to have time to sit back and think more strategically, because everything is sort of putting out fires regarding the data center. This is going down. I mean, if you're doing all that, how are you going to find time to come up with a true cloud management strategy? Next is you have to be providing your team the proper tools and training. Maybe, it's in training and innovation, training in the new technologies, just so that they know what they are to see if they're applicable. And then what else do you have to provide? Well, here it comes again, providing thought leadership. Now let's go the other way. If you're an observer, you're lower clout, and you're just trying to move horizontally now from observer to say, you know what, before I can worry about all the clout stuff, we got to get a little innovation stuff going on internally. So to move horizontally this way, again, the first thing that you need to do is you have to make sure that you have, time delivery, that your staff is interested in innovation, that you're giving your staff time to think like before, and providing the thought leadership and tools. But what you also need to do is you really need to understand why your clout is so low. Is it because of operational issues related to you, or is it because of other things? You have to understand that why, because how you act to move to enhance your clout is of enormous importance. Because the thing is, you don't want to come up with all these innovative ideas if you don't have any clout, because you're the reason being is because the systems aren't up. But what you can do now is that if you've done the things that are above, you feel you're in good shape. What you can do is you can use IT as a testing ground. What that is the organization may not believe that you can do cool things to, say, for example, using machine learning. But so what do? You have your own organization. You got to implement it anywhere. So implement these new technologies inside your own organization first. Move toward Oracle's self-maintaining database. What that would be is that basically it automatically rebuilds indexes and does other things based on the SQL statements that come out. So you implement that, or you implement other parts of machine learning to make IT more effective. Then you can use that as the showcase when you're talking to human resources or finance or other parts of the company on, to say, hey, we're using this stuff internally. Wouldn't you like some of this? And they can see your competence at it. They can see that you're providing innovation. And as a result of that, will be more likely to let you move toward the leader position. But now let's talk about some of the tools that are required, again, to move you in this direction down innovation. Again, there's that innovative culture that I mentioned. But you also have to have business and industry knowledge. Why? Because you have to understand what else is going on in the industry. You know, when I speak to, say, you know, to groups, I say to someone, let's say I'm going to pick on HR again. I'd say if you're using, say, the Kronos's HR systems, then what you should do is you should go to a user group meeting, certainly for Kronos, because that's the systems you have. But what you should also do is go to one for Workday or go to one for Oracle. The reason, and people would say, well, you know, why would I want to go to a Workday user conference? We're not using Workday. No, but you know what? They may be doing some really neat things in their software that will give you a new perspective on how to enhance things, you know, within the packages that you're using. And I would say the same thing going the other way. I'd say if you're using Workday, then go to an Oracle or a Kronos user conference. Because, you know, it's that extra report that you could build by hand that's not built into whichever platform you happen to be in. Next is understanding general business trends. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of people are working from home now. You know, just kidding. But anyway, is that all right? That's a trend. That's something that everybody's doing. How can IT help that trend happen? Another one is, you know, that, you know, there are many related to your industry. If you're in manufacturing or you know, retail, you know, I'll say retail like Lowe's or Home Depot, you know, where you're selling things that are sort of metal based and so on. Can you use 3D printing in some way? You know, I know there's one company, what they do is that they make like mouth guard things where they do an impression of you and then you send it off and then you get it back. I forget the name of the company so that you may not need the physical braces. You just wear those things. You know how they're building all those things? They're building them using 3D printers. In fact, it's a company, it's based out of the mid-Atlantic somewhere. Forgive me, I can't remember their name. They are the biggest owner of 3D printers in the world. And they're making these things based on calculations that they do by taking pictures of your mouth. How can, whatever business you're in, how can you use those type things to your advantage? That ties also into the technical trends, but also, you know, the technical ability to be innovative. In other words, what technologies do you need? You know, you need sandboxes. Maybe it's, you know, maybe you want to move in a big data. Well, you know, if you want to move in a big data, you got a couple of Linux boxes with a little extra space on it, then download Hadoop, you know, and just try it in the background externally and then figure out how to do it outside of your own department once you now have the tools and the ability to learn about it. Next is that you also need, in addition to those, you also need some skills. Those skills could be around design thinking. If you haven't heard of design thinking, it's around human-centered design. It's something, you know, write that down and I'll give you a homework assignment to Google it afterwards. Basically, it's a different way of designing products. It ties, interestingly, a little bit sort of as a cross between Agile and Lean IT in various ways, but it has a human-centered design-based philosophy in how you figure out what the requirements should be. I'll leave it at there. That in itself could be a whole webinar or two or 3 day class. Next is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is so important for everyone. I mean, to be honest, is that I wish that in my college days, actually, before that, this was really a term that was brought to the standard business vision. Is what I would say is study emotional intelligence. You know, basically, it's you knowing more things about yourself allows you to manage yourself. And most particularly, the more things and the more empathy you have for others, the better that you can implement systems, sell to them, support them as a business user, pick a topic. But again, if you've never studied emotional intelligence, I strongly suggest that you consider it. Next is presentation skills. You know, who are you going to be presenting to in your career? Well, it's going to be people who have some interest with what you want to say. Could be your business goals. For example, if you're making a presentation to say your boss, whoever that might be, or various business users on implementing a new system on some business objective that you have, the better job that you can do presenting, and that's the quality of your PowerPoints, it's where you stand, it's how well you can articulate what it is you want to say, get your point across, etc., is the better chance that you're going to be, that your business goals for that presentation are going to be met. But also something else, and now I'm going to speak to as a senior executive, prior senior executive myself. And for any other senior executives that are on, you'll probably laugh a little bit to yourself as I say this. Whenever I watched a presentation, given by someone one or multiple levels down from me organizational. What I do is I watch that presentation from two perspectives. One perspective was certainly why they're there. They're pitching that we should implement system, blah, 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 etc. So, should we move forward toward the direction that's being recommended in the presentation? But what I'm also doing is I'm watching this person and I'm evaluating them as potential for future higher level positions within the company. So one of the best ways that you can be promoted internally, certainly you have to do good work and there's a lot of other things that go into it, is when you present to senior management, which I will just refer to here as your boss's boss, then what you want to do is do the best job possible because you're also being viewed from that other perspective. Next, you also have to be understanding to do it right as the technology trends, as you saw, as we talked about that before. But now let's talk about a couple of examples. First example is project management. All right, in a typical project management, whether you're the project manager, is you have to basically, or a PM or a PO in the agile world, product owner, is that when in a typical project, the project manager is brought in after the decision is made what to do. So you can see it. Senior executives are standing around. What are they saying? They're saying, gee, you know what? We should do this. Yeah, let's do it. All right, what should we do first? Gee, let's bring in a project manager. All right, as a result of that, by definition, when the project manager is brought in, they've already missed all the discussions and the strategy related to the digital transformation. Why? Because it's those decisions that caused them to be brought in the first place. In effect, with digital, if you're involved in, I'll call it DX strategy, really, which is really sort of the newer buzzword coming in related to it. The first thing that you want to do as the project manager is you don't want to just get in once the decision has been made. You want to try to expand your role as the project manager, as an IT manager, actually we'll talk about next, or the CIO, of not being brought in after the decision is made to make it happen, to be there figuring out not just the how and the when, but the what and the why. That's what really catapults you organizationally in regard to your clout, professional level, and just getting cooler stuff to work on. So now, as an example of that, what does the project, the PMs and the product owners need? Well, they have to understand business strategy, competitive analysis, stakeholder identification. In other words, who are the decision makers in your organization that you have to make sure that this goes along with? Strategic planning. There we go. And cross-functional organizational politics. Now, when you think of IT in a typical IT role, don't you think about competitive analysis and strategic planning? No. My point in here is if you want to get a seat at that business table, you should. Now let's talk about a second example, basically, of IT managers. Is, the goal is to be a strategic partner, not a service provider. If you think of it now, bringing that up a level, service provider, people think about what to do, they tell you to do it, you do it. Is you want to be in that strategic partner role. How do you do it? Well, this list is going to look very similar to the list that I just told about the project managers. In fact, the reason it's so close to this list is because generically, these are the things that IT people need to get into. They need to truly understand the business that they're in from more than just a technological perspective. So for the CIOs or any person within IT, what you need to, that's dealing, say, with the business. Now, if you're working internally only on, say, upgrading routers, then you should understand what's going on with routers and technology in your industry and movement to the cloud and the effect of that, but probably a little bit less on the business side. But what I would say to you is that if you're in any type of IT manager's role or in an IT executive role, is what you need to do is you need to think business first and technology second. There's no such thing as an IT project anymore. What they are is they're business projects that require technical support. Now you might say, well, upgrading the routers, for example, how is that a business first thing? It's a technology upgrade. Yes, it is, but what is upgrading those routers doing? Why are you doing it? Just because it's a pretty new box? No, there's business justification behind upgrading those routers and is how you should present it to others. And what that justification is it's minimizing risk because the routers are old. And it's increasing, when they're going out of service, et cetera. And if those routers go down, so does every application in the company. So you could call, router upgrade. One thing you could name that is technical risk reduction. Now, what it also does is, let's say you're going from 10 gigabit to 100 gigabit. Well, all of a sudden, everybody's PCs and laptops are going to be running a lot faster. So if it's running faster, then what does that mean? That's going to enhance their productivity. So you could also name that same router project, risk minimization and office productivity project. So, but you see now you're tying it to the business. It lets the business understand not only the justification for why you're spending that money, but also, and most importantly, what does it mean for them? Now, we've talked a lot about moving from one thing to the other and so on. So then the big question becomes here is all right, so how do we do it? What's the order? What's the plan? What I'd like to give you here is basically, 4 steps, or actually 5 steps, to be able to, to do this and move forward, both moving, again, from observer, either to requester or implementer if you're already there, up to leader, or if you're up to leader, to use it basically to just enhance your current philosophy. So step 1 here, what this is you really need to assess your own organization. What really is, your internal IT's organizational clout and its ability to innovate. You're checking the axes, which we talked about earlier. And again, as you're thinking about this from your personal perspective, think about this from you. What is your internal clout when you really think about it? When you talk to people, listen, or whatnot. Do you consider yourself innovative, or you're just happy with the process stuff? Again, either one on that is good. Just know yourself is all I'm saying here, which, by the way, ties back to emotional intelligence, which I suggested that earlier you consider looking more into. Next is to, define the role that you would like IT to play. If you would say, IT is in an implementer role, we're extremely highly respected, we do great stuff, we get good funding, we're really happy here. I don't see a need, given our industry, given our structure, given anything else, why we want to move over and really be super innovative. That it's not needed because of our company, our culture, or whatever it is. If you're happy in that implementation role, then you work toward making sure that you have high clout, enough innovation internally to be able to stay up with technology and whatnot. But decide where you want to go. If you're an observer, do you want to go this way, or do you want to go this way? It's basically, if you think of it, step 1 is current state, step 2 is future state. And then what you need for step 3, like most of what we do in IT, is you need to come up with a gap analysis. It's the difference between where we are and where we want to be. Step 4 is filling the gap. So what that is think about the IT enhanced service. If you want to increase your clout, then maybe what you need to do is say, hey, which services aren't really working well? And say email keeps going down. Well, you know what? A big way that you can improve your own clout might be to move from your internal Exchange servers and start using 365 in the cloud. Why? Because your Exchange servers are old. You'd like to get those servers just generically out, maybe use them for something else or retire them. Put it in the cloud. Let Microsoft worry about it. You have to build a culture of innovation, if in fact that's one of those things in that gap analysis. And you have to provide your employees with the right knowledge, which is both business and technical, and the skills, which are also, if you think about the things I've spoken about, business and technical. And then, step 5 is basically marketing IT's high quality and its ingenuity. And if you think about it, high quality is basically to move you up in the cloud side. And ingenuity is basically, for all intents and purposes here, another word for innovative nature. So from here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to open it up to questions. I would like to say is, by the way, is the things you've seen here, this is actually an excerpt and of one of the 10 sections contained within the ITMLE, the IT Management and Leadership Executive, where the IT Management Leadership Institute, where you heard my bio, I'm the executive director of, and very proud to say, let me say, a ProTech business partner. Is that talk to your ProTech salesperson or representative. We have the 3-day classes regarding either of these certifications, which we'd love for you to learn more about. From here, if I can ask you if any questions come in regarding the topic we've been discussing.
They sure have. Thank you, Eric. The first question is, I don't run the entire IT organization. So how can I use this info into my specific advantage, or use this info to my specific advantage?
Okay, absolutely. What I'd say is, great question, is just think about it you personally. I could take exactly the same slides, take out everything related to IT in total, and then say, what's your role in the organization? Do you feel that what's your personal clout within the organization? Do people feel that you're respected, that you do good work? Do people feel that you're an agent of change, that you come up with good ideas? Are you a thought leader? And look at all of the things that we've discussed, but just sort of translate it from organizational to personal, both in regard to the skills that are required, the knowledge that you need to gain, and then tie that to where you want to go professionally. And if, in your future role, your next promotion and promotion after that, and tune the specific types of business and technical skills and business and technical knowledge to drive you toward that position. So effectively develop the same plan in the previous slide that was shown here, but just for you personally, as opposed to the business at large. Great question, thank you.
Thank you. I've got another question here. I am a senior IT manager. What role does the IT culture play in implementing your action plan?
Oh, actually, culture is everything. What I would say is that, and again, I'll turn back to this for a moment, as you're assessing in step one, you should also be, from a cultural perspective, assessing your organization. In other words, what is its culture? For example, in fact, Peter Drucker, it's one of my favorite quotes. He says that the culture eats strategy for breakfast. What that basically means, if you say, yeah, we're going to move in this direction, and somebody looks at you and says, you know what, great idea, but that's not going to work here. Okay? When they say that's not going to work here, what they're really saying to you is that might be a really good idea, but given our current organizational culture, this would be countercultural for us. So what I would say, if you're saying that, we need to be more innovative as an IT organization, then what you need to do is first say is that as part of why isn't it? What are the cultural factors, let alone the technology and things along that line? Do you need to change the culture first? So in other words, you start talking about innovation. You have YouTubes at your staff meeting about cool things like design, design thinking and machine learning and things along that line. Get them thinking about being more innovative and excited about it. And then you do this gap analysis and move forward. So it's like anything else, sort of its organizational change, is do the influence piece first and then the rest of it second. Now, you may find that your culture is right in direction where you want to go, in which case, great. That would definitely handle it for you.
Great. I was thinking earlier when you were mentioning about the importance of a culture that is a safe environment for inspiring innovation. And it really plays out this year with innovation and creativity having to be at the forefront as we all kind of navigate through these uncharted territories. It's so important.
Absolutely. And if I can say, as management in general, actually, this is a section from the ITMLP. I was going to speak on it, but I will. Is that, with everyone managing in a virtual world, in a virtual environment, call it a work from home environment or whatnot, is that all of the management techniques that you've previously used, regarding delegation, motivation, performance review, all of these things that you've always been doing. In a virtual world, you still have to do them. The difference is that I like to think of best practices in a virtual world is best management practices on steroids. The reason they're on steroids is they can't just happen as you're walking around the office. You have to be much more deliberate, strategic, and tactical regarding their implementation. So, all of the things that we've talked about here, some of which, if everyone's in the office, you can, as you're walking down the hall, be talking about innovation. If you're going to do it with everybody in their own homes, then you have to basically change your approach, or I would say enhance your approach to do the same kinds of things. So, absolutely. In fact, for I won't say younger, but for first-time managers, if you've been a manager, let's say, for less than 3 years, is that this whole work-from-home environment is doubly difficult for you. The reason being is because you're still, growing your management style, your best practices. You're still getting better at delegation and better at performance measurement and, all of that kind of thing. And now you have to do it in sort of this, sort of steroids environment, to use the same word, of now figuring out how to do it virtually. For people who've been managers, say, for 5 years till, a zillion years old, whatever, is that for you, is that you're very set in your ways. You have quality techniques and processes that are really second nature and rote on how to delegate and motivate and those kind of things based on your management style. What you need to do now is decide how your style needs to be modified in order to still use your same best practices and knowledge, but distribute it to those others in a slightly different way.
Absolutely. And I was just going to highlight again, Eric, what you'd mentioned, that the 2 courses that are good stepping stones coming out of your presentation today. And for those of you who don't have an account manager here at ProTech, if you're interested in registering, you can go to our website, protechtraining.com, and there's also a toll-free number and an email address on the screen in front of you as well. And we can help get you registered for that. And I was just going to mention, Eric, you highlighted, filling the gap in the various skills and training that you require through all of this. And, whether it be the emotional intelligence, the conflict resolution, all the way to project management, ProTech offers training in all of those skills and knowledge required for the IT professional. So just keep an eye on the website and let us know any classes that you're interested in addition to the ones on your screen. So unless you have anything else to add, Eric, that concludes the questions and the presentation. And I wanted to thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who spent an hour of your life with us. And thank you again to ProTech for sponsoring today's webinar. Greatly appreciate it.
Great, thanks. And thanks to you, Eric. We really appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody.